Good afternoon and welcome to the 846 Governance, Administration and Finance Committee meeting. We have a full committee present and also welcome Councillor Hamill, Councillor Tozer. We'll start with, so no leave of absence, no apologies, confirmation of minutes. Someone like to move Councillor Wilkinson and seconded Councillor Fowler. All in favour? Great, thank you. Conflict of interest declarations?
Chairman, I have one on 7.2. I don't know if you want to take it now or as we get there.
Maybe we wait till we get to 7.2. Thank you. Or should we do it now?
Okay.
Yeah,
well, it's a prescribed conflict of interest declaration, so I'll be leaving the room. It relates to 7.2, which is marina and pontoon leasing in the Hope Island Channel, and I'm a beneficiary of Harchelma Proprietary Limited, trading as the Gates Family Trust, which operates primarily at Sanctuary Cove, Hope Island, so I will not participate in the debate given that the report relates to benefits from the Hope Island Channel.
Thank you. Okay, so you'll be leaving the room for that?
Yes.
Okay, great. We might just go to start items now. So we have the forward planning schedule in 5.1, 6.1, 6.2, 6.6. Is there anything anyone wishes to unstar? No? Okay. Does anyone have any questions about 6.4? We could possibly star that if you don't. Okay, we'll star that one as well. Okay, so if I could move the start items, 5.1, 6.1, 6.2, 6.4, 6.6. Seconder? Councillor Martin. All in favour? Great, thank you. And I suggest that we start with 7.1 because we do have a number of people present for that, number of officers. So if everyone's okay with that, we'll start with 7.1 and then move from there. Okay, so if we go to 7.1. Hang on, sorry. 217. So if the CFO could come in and provide us a presentation, that would be great. Thank you.
Chairman, it's on grey pages.
Pardon, just hold on 1 second, sorry.
Oh, sorry, it's a confidential item.
Thank you. So we'll move into close for budget considerations. I'll move that. Seconded, Councillor Taylor. All in favour? Thank you very much. streaming on. Okay, so we have a recommendation for 7.1. Councillor Gates, Acting Mayor, you moving that? And seconder? Seconder, Councillor Wilkinson. Would you like to speak to it?
Sorry. Certainly. Just to say that the city's in great shape, and congratulations really to the officers, because we have a really strong financial position, and I think it's something we can all be really proud of. So thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against? For? Okay, all in favour? Thank you, carried. We'll get back onto our agenda, so we'll get back to 6.3. Are there any questions on this item, 6.3, regarding the light vehicles for community initiatives? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I had just a couple of questions, and I might just ask them all at once, but if I need to go back and repeat them, I'm happy to. They're fairly straightforward, so I'm hoping we can just answer them succinctly. My first question is, how many of these vehicles will be available? What is the current market of those particular vehicles? And after the 12 months, what's the process of potentially either the city getting these back, or would there be an opportunity for community groups to buy out the items? I just want a bit of clarity around that process, if there is any that we can get today.
Through the Chair. So we have identified 289 vehicles that are surplus to requirements. Most of those temporarily have been added back into our pools, our general and restricted pools. There was 80 out of the 289 that were previously commuter use vehicles. We're proposing for this particular process that up to 20 become available. We don't want to flood the market all at once by releasing those vehicles, so there becomes a great opportunity for us to provide a number. We didn't specify particularly a number because we wanted the process to determine what the actual number was. We're thinking, though, at this stage up to 20, though it could be more and it could be less, with a particular concentration, obviously, on safety with these vehicles. In terms of the...
Sorry, may I just ask on that? So when you're saying not flooding the market, you're talking about selling them and then getting a lower price because we're putting them all on the market at the same time?
That's correct, Chair.
So we're effectively it's not costing the city or ratepayers more because...
We would stagger them otherwise.
Right, we would be just paying, selling our cars at cheaper rate if we
otherwise
threw them all in now.
Be sitting unused. Yep. In terms of the process, we are proposing that they do get returned after 12 months. So we have included that in the guidelines. The reason being is that we did want to realise the financial savings that we had identified. It's part of our opportunity to get savings for the city. So we were proposing that we just do it for a 12-month period and then they get returned. We didn't want to set up any unrealistic expectations in terms of numbers of vehicles that could be available for a longer term. These are vehicles that have already been used. I think that was it. Any other questions?
Through you, Chair, it was only just if we had a current market value for the vehicles, but I appreciate what the Chair's question or comment was before, and so I understand that part. I think this as a general idea is a really good idea. I just have a little bit of concern around if we give these 20-odd vehicles out, basically. I just hope that those community groups are very much having that realistic expectation that that's the entirety of that time that they will have it for. And again, I trust that we will, of course, make sure that that's very well communicated, but I just feel like it's just something that I know how much these vehicles could mean to a particular organisation, and then after 12 months, if that disappears, it could be kind of a bit of a change for them. So, yeah, and I don't know if it's part of that possibility. I realise we're going to get them back, and that's part of the return strategy, but I don't know. Have we deliberated possibly selling those out to those particular groups, if that's a viable option for those groups at all?
Through the chair, yes, we did consider quite a number of options. These are obviously used vehicles, so they're actually not brand new, but at the end of the 12-month period, there might be, I see the CEO snuck forward, there might be an opportunity to actually, if the community groups are interested, we're obviously going to go to the market and sell them anyway, so there may be the opportunity to actually sell them at a similar appropriate rate to the community groups, but we've tried to be clear. Sorry.
I think, sorry, Councillor Hamill, you were next. Yep.
Chair, it's not spoken to in the report, but when we were alerted to this some time ago that there was going to be some vehicles available, there was an indication that upgrading the vehicles that our SES units have was a consideration. So if it sounds like it might have been done, but is there an update available on that of what's progressed in that space?
Yes, we have been upgrading the safety on all our other vehicles. I can't recall the exact number, but it is a program over, I think, 2 years, 2 to 3 financial years, and I think we've done, is it 20 vehicles so far, with a schedule to continue. They're not exactly straightforward. There are a lot of safety specifics, equipment that needs to be added, so they do have to be scheduled over a period of time.
For you, Chair, as possibly an action, could we get a memo with an update of what that 2 to 3 year schedule looks like, who's been done so far, and what the program for the next couple of years looks like to make sure all SES units have got better vehicles than what they had?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Doing a great job, Suze. But so as part of this work, if it's not reflected in the report, my apologies. We have assessed our vehicle pool and we've taken the best of what we've got and upgraded up. So these are, in effect, the surplus to requirement vehicles after we've done that work. But I'm more than happy to ask the EGM to come back with a report on how we're going with that upgrade process and what's left in the time frame. And just on the question the councillor asked, I personally have spoken to a number of community groups to canvass this. It's high, it's been seen as very beneficial to some. To others, they're saying, no, that's not our need. That's why we've got more than 20, but it could. But really, that's what the volunteer or the not-for-profit industry, if you like, on the Gold Coast is saying in terms of the demand. But we've made it very clear that if this was to go ahead, subject to council resolution, it's a 12-month one-off deal. And to your specific question, councillor, look, there's a lot of upside in offering it, but it would be at market rate.
Acting Mayor.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair, do we have an idea of the value of, say, 20 of these vehicles?
They're actually all different values depending on the age and the state of the vehicles. I don't think we've got an actual dollar value. Just let's check if the officers know.
No, it is, sorry, through you, Chair, it is very dependent on the vehicles that get used and the ones that get called. So some of these community organisations might, for example, be seeking some of our utility vehicles as opposed to others like your Meals on Wheels who want the small hatchback. I guess the point that we're making, though, very clearly is that when considering the likely drop in overall price by bringing all of these onto the market at once, we're probably well in front in any case. These are vehicles, let me be very clear, these are vehicles that would be sitting in Nerang in a car park unused because we won't bring them to market because of the likely drop in overall price by saturating the market based on the advice that we've been given.
Councillor Curtis.
Thank you. Would you mind if I made a comment? It's not a question. I just wanted to take the opportunity to congratulate the CEO and the Mayor for pursuing this initiative because it's really, it's instead of putting something in the too hard basket, because I can see that this does have some tricky parts to it and there definitely are risks, but it's actually like a really awesome initiative that's capitalising on this surplus that we have, and I just wanted to commend you for taking that risk on board for the benefit of the community. And we might learn some things from it and there might be some negative impact, but I'm really glad that we're willing to take that initiative. I think it's awesome.
Sorry, Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Chair. I just had some questions just around the EOI eligibility, and I think when we're talking and looking at community groups, so perhaps this could be useful for when it is a temporary potential of 1 year. To me, it's really those community groups that could use that extra vehicle to increase their capacity. And my concern is the clause here that says that they can't go for the grant if they've had a previous city grant before, because it might be that we have a Rosie's, for instance, that could temporarily use an extra vehicle to increase their capacity to meet demand for that year period, and it would exclude perhaps some of those community groups who might be in need.
It's only if they've had a vehicle funded.
Through the chair. Oh, yeah. Sorry, through the chair, we can absolutely take that on board, Councillor Fowler. I suppose the beauty with these guidelines is we can certainly build into them because they sit behind the community grants policy. We can certainly build into them those requirements to give that bit of flex to the needs of the groups at the moment, and particularly if they already have an approved grant on foot.
Yeah, like you think of, sorry, Chair, you think of serving our people and people like that. I know if they had an extra vehicle, they can't keep up with demand. So then if they had that extra vehicle for that year, they could. But what if they did get a city grant in the past for a vehicle? That's all.
Through you, Chair, I think that's a good point. I think we can just take that out and assess each on their merits.
I did have one concern, and I don't know whether you've addressed or considered it. So when we did do our last grant application and we allocated funds, and then the next day there was a Facebook post from the city celebrating that we were gifting a car to the same group that we had allocated funds to the day before, not knowing we were gifting a car. So making sure somehow that if there are contributions to community groups from one box, that we know about it from the other perspective. Councillor Gates, did you still have a question?
I have a question about the vagueness of this report in terms of there's 289 vehicles that we've just been informed that are surplus to our needs. We don't want to flood the market, but I think it should be up to a certain number. I don't know how other representatives feel, but at what level do we think we're flooding the market? Is it 250 vehicles? Is that flooding the market? Is it 200 vehicles? Are we going to accept applications up to a certain amount? I felt really, I just felt it's not clear enough for us to have, I don't want to see them sit in a car park. I'm with you, absolutely. I don't want to see that, but I think we need some stronger indication, or for my part, I would like to know up to how many vehicles we consider making available.
Yeah, and when you're answering that question, for me, what I would like to know is, how much do we think it would be costing us? If we sold it this year or we sold it next year, are we losing $1 million, or what is it? Thank you.
So a couple of things. I'll probably deal with one at a time, then I'll let Chris speak as well. So I'm happy to cap it. I think what will cap this is actually interest in the not-for-profit sector rather than our desire. We think, I was a bit surprised when I first heard 20. I thought it might be a few more, but I actually think it's the not-for-profit sector on the Gold Coast saying, whilst I take on board and I thank Councillor Curtis for her comments, there's not actually a huge amount of not-for-profits who need vehicles. It's not necessarily what they do. So it's going to be capped more at that end, acting mayor, rather than it is us putting a 50 cap on it. Notwithstanding that, I take on board what you've said, and I'm more than happy to have that detail added to the guidelines and for the guidelines to be circulated prior to the process starting. Or I'm happy, if councillors want to say, a maximum of 35 or 50, because I don't think we'll get to 50 anyway. The question around what does flooding the market looks like is a really hard question for us to answer. Really will be guided by the on-sellers, by the auction houses. What we do know, though, is that there would never, in recent memory, at least, Chris, been a sale of auctions at that size and scale on the Gold Coast for these kind of vehicles, and it will absolutely drive down the price. So we'll be guided very much by the auction houses we use. And then the other factor is, and it's been said to me by a few, well, could you send them down to Melbourne or Sydney for sale? But the cost of doing that probably offsets just waiting. I don't know. I mean, I'm happy to be guided by council on a cap, or I'm happy to provide through you, Chair, those guidelines for councillors to see. In terms of cost, again, I'll let Chris speak to that, but that's a difficult one to measure because it's hard to assess what the likely drop in price would be versus holding them. We will hold these vehicles. I keep saying this, we will hold these vehicles for 12 months if we don't go through this process. And it's looking like it's around 50 to 60 vehicles we'll hold for 12 months. Is that fair, Chris?
Yeah, that's fair, Tim. And through the Chair, yeah, Councillor, I suppose part of the report and the bit of vagueness around the report as well as around what we wanted to do here today was to bring to councillors an expression of interest to understand what the criteria is around those vehicles. We really don't know what the demand will be from the community groups at this stage, so we didn't want to put a figure on that. We don't know, is there going to be 5, is there going to be 105? We're not really sure. So we wanted to have that opportunity to have them all go against the same criteria, bring that back to council, and then the council make that decision on what they think that should be at the end of the day and what's appropriate. Yeah. As the CEO said, it's really hard to understand what it's going to cost us for those vehicles because, again, until we get the EOI back and what type of vehicles the community groups need, we don't know what we would have potentially disposed of anyway in that time. So again, when we come back with the EOI and those applications, we'll have a better understanding of what type of vehicles they are, and we'll be able to provide that costing back to councillors at that time.
Mate, just first, I do have one concern with that approach, and that is my experience is the number one precious resource of community groups and charity groups is time. So they're going to have to be making a submission, making an allocation, and we're not even, based on what you're saying, if we go this process, it's just an expression of interest. There's no commitment or clarity that they will receive something. So anything where we're asking charity groups to fill out another application to go through a process without certainty, I'm a little bit concerned about. Councillor Gate.
Can I respond to that? Is that okay, Chair? So 2 things. Firstly, we're doing everything humanly possible to make it as simple as possible, which is simply just tell us what you want, tell us what your use would be, and so we will do that. The other thing is, I don't want to make any promises, but I think what you're hearing from us is there's more cars than there are requests. So I think you're going to have a very strong chance, councillor, of getting your vehicle up if you put a request in, and it's a reasonable and sensible request without, I'm sure all those not-for-profits are watching this right now, subject to an appropriate process, of course.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Chair. And I guess it just follows on. I appreciate what you're saying with you don't know exactly how big the uptake necessarily would be at this stage from those community groups. It's good that we've got some idea and we've landed at 20, but whether that has a bit of flex, I can appreciate. But given that we've got 289 vehicles, is there any other plans as such for, you know, if we don't get that additional interest as such, what's the plans for these other vehicles? Like, what's the future look like for them at this time? Because I appreciate we're obviously not wanting to flood the market in any respect through the auction sales, but is there a plan to certainly offload some of these vehicles over a staggered period of time in that case?
So it's one of those ones where I can answer it in 1 word or 40, councillor. So yes is the short answer. There are 3 options being presented to council for those vehicles. Hold them, find a suitable home for them, or sell. Ultimately, we will sell. We will. Part of the hold might be too that we hold and roll them back through the fleet. So we'll do a bit of that too. So we're not. I think. Well, I can say there's a CEO direction in place at the moment that there will be no new vehicles purchased as we try and bring the numbers down. There are always going to be specialty vehicles, to Councillor Hamill's point, but so we're trying to bring the fleet down that way. But the short answer to your question is hold, find a suitable home for 12 months, or sell.
Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Chair. I just think also if this does proceed, it's such a great news story for the city in terms of a PR perspective.
My apologies. I'm doing the peripheral vision thing.
Okay.
I'll come to you in a moment, Councillor Tozer.
Sorry. And I just wonder if there is an opportunity, if this does proceed, that not that we want to be spending money, but if there's a way of identifying that on the vehicles, that this vehicle was donated to this community group by the City of Gold Coast, because I just think it's such a great story to tell across the city that we're supporting these groups in this way.
Through you, Chair, that's another one-word answer, yes. They will be badged, but they'll be badged simply and inexpensively. They're not going to be wrapped.
Yeah.
And then Councillor Gates.
Is there a reserve for every vehicle?
There will be. Yeah.
A reserve, like is there a reserve price? We've obviously got 289 vehicles and they've got an asset price. We've quantified them as an asset for the city. They're valued currently?
Yeah, there will be a reserve.
So let's say hypothetically we do put this expression of interest out and there's actually quite a lot of organisations. What's the eligibility of those organisations? Do they need to be registered charities or they can just be incorporated associations?
I'll just let the General Manager speak to that because it's been completed through the grants process.
Through the Chair, so they'll have to meet the definition of a community organisation under the Local Government Act and the definition and restrictions within the current community grants policy. One of the other factors we'll look at is whether or not they have current grant funding under that policy and whether they have any outstanding grants that haven't been acquitted or if they haven't met the conditions of a grant. And we'll look to scaling those organisations based on those first gates of eligibility, Councillor.
So having some knowledge of this particular area, I feel like there's a bunch of churches that would meet the category but may not ever have exposed them. Like they might in some of the community grants, but not many. There'll be a lot of churches that perhaps make application, and there's probably 90 of them across the city who have a young pastor or an associate pastor or a part-time intern who actually manages all of the youth engagement programs, and they wouldn't normally be seeking government funding to run those, but a car might actually be of some appeal to them. Are we intending to, like the community grants policy currently excludes chambers of commerce from making applications, so chambers of commerce, is it likely we'll exclude any other groups other than chambers of commerce?
It is the same definition, so technically a church is a non-for-profit and they are registered charities under the ACNC as well. So technically they could. However, if council were minded, we can certainly place further eligibility restrictions on the applications through the guidelines.
I probably wouldn't be supportive of that necessarily, but I think we might be understating the interest of this specific thing in the context of other grant programs that are a little bit more difficult to manage. So we found out today there's 289 cars, somewhere between 40 and 80 it seems like will be made available through this process. The rest of those are going to be put to market at that reserve price. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
And are they being put to market just in the Gold Coast market, or are we engaging Brisbane-based auction houses to do that as well?
Brisbane as well, I'm being told.
Yeah. And are any of them going to other cities other than Brisbane or the Gold Coast?
Well, as I mentioned, we will have to do a cost-based analysis around the cost of getting the cars to those other markets in order to look at the likely return rather than just holding them. So I would say it's unlikely. Brisbane's an hour up the road, but that will come out as we go through the tender process for the sale of these.
Is it feasible to provide let's say, for instance, it doesn't flood the market and these are saleable at the right price. Is it feasible to provide the community grant recipient, which I'm assuming is how we're going to play here, the recipient a first right of refusal on a vehicle that they buy if someone expresses interest in that at the reserve price?
Well, yeah, we can do that. Yes, absolutely, we can do that.
Yeah, that'd be great. It'd be great to incorporate that into the agreement we struck with them.
As I mentioned, there's some upside in us doing that in any case, just because it's ease of sale, and as long as they're meeting appropriate market rate, then that seems to make sense. It's not dissimilar to what we've done for other assets of this kind.
The last question I have relates to quite a lot of small organisations that sometimes don't have the financial experience or stewardship. They'll see this as an opportunity to help their organisation continue what they do. Maybe they don't have an auditor or an accountant who's part of their board, are we providing any advice, or would we be able to provide any advice about how they should be accounting for this as a gift or a rental? Are we going to? Is there any standard advice that we can provide to community organisations like that?
I'd slightly disagree with the chair and say that is part of the role of the grants team when they're dealing with these not-for-profits, to make sure they've got a really good understanding about what their obligations are and how they report on it. But I'll also agree with the chair at the same time and say that, part of these organisations need to take on the responsibility for that as well.
Got it. Thank you.
I'd just be concerned about us getting into a position where they think the city's giving them tax advice and things. Councillor Gates?
I just have a query, if someone can help me, about the governance around this, in terms of a church applies for, or any other not-for-profit applies as part of a grant process, and it's how do we ensure that how the car is being used and that it's not just being provided by the ratepayers for someone to drive to and from work? What's the governance around it?
There would be a certain irony in that, given that most of these cars have been taken off staff for the purposes of only driving to and from work.
What I would say to you, really unfair, to be honest. Really unfair that the officers in the main have been on call. The ones
no, that is not the case. Well, these cars have been taken off staff because they have used them primarily for driving to and from work only. That's what the data on the cars says, Councillor. So it's not unfair, it's factually accurate. What I would say...
Well, I've had experience where officers have gone out in the middle of the night in a council car and they don't do it anymore because they would have to drive to the depot to pick up a car to go back.
What I would say to you through the chair is that if a councillor requires a car for work use, there are more than enough cars in the system to allow that, and that's what the data pointed out. Can I answer your question by saying that this will be treated like any other grants program? We will assess them based on the criteria set, and my officers inside Nikki's area will assess these just the same as they would any other grant, and they will be required to demonstrate that they are using their vehicle in a manner consistent with what they've put their application in for during the 12 months.
Okay, but I have to have the final say. I wasn't interested in a councillor having access to a car, but officers who are involved in maintenance, I've had experience where they have needed a car to help with a community complaint in the middle of the night. And not in recent times, but it has occurred.
Yep, and that hasn't changed. Those cars are still available through you, Chair, for those officers.
Without labouring the point, I think the acting mayor's point was that they have to go to the depot to pick it up in the middle of the night, but I'll leave that. I'm wondering if we should get to a recommendation. I did just have one question. What happens, I suppose there's a whole element we need to consider about insurance and liability if someone totals the car. So
I'll let Susan, sorry, I'll let the director answer that.
Chair, that is contained within the report, so council still keeps the insurance underway, and then the relevant organisation will be responsible for any fines, etc., that may be incurred. We would have to pay it otherwise anyway.
Through you, Chair, just a question on that insurance. If a community group was using it and the insurer failed to pay, would the risk, if it was uninsured, an incident, would that be on the agreement? Would that be on the user, or would that potentially be a risk to the city?
We've really put a focus in the application on safety, because we are wanting to ensure that safety in this instance is a high priority, but depending on who's at fault, obviously would determine who has to pay. But if it was at fault of the driver in our vehicle, then our insurance would have to cover it.
Okay. Would anyone like to move a recommendation? Councillor Curtis, seconded Councillor Fowler. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Curtis?
No, so I'll echo the sentiments I shared earlier, that I think it's really exciting that that we have an administration and a council that are willing to take on board some initiatives that are dynamic and responsive to community need. There's certainly an easier pathway, but I think what we're doing is in the best interest of the community and will be well received.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against? Okay, all in favour? Thank you, that's carried. Thank you for that. We'll now go to, I was actually going to suggest we star 6.5, but I didn't. Is there anyone who has any questions regarding 6.5? If not, I'm happy to move it. Seconder, Councillor Fowler. Okay, thank you. I did receive a brief on this from our directors, and it's good to see that progress is on track. Thank you. All in favour? Great. So we'll now move to 7.2, which is a closed item. Oh, okay. Yes, certainly.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make a declaration, and I am leaving the room, and I won't be back. So I need to declare that item 7.2, marina and pontoon leasing in the Hope Island Channel, presents a prescribed interest for me because I am a beneficiary of Harchelma Proprietary Limited, trading as the Gates Family Discretionary Trust, which operates primarily at Sanctuary Cove. I will not participate in the debate given the report relates to benefits from the Hope Island Channel. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So this is a closed item. So we will move into close pursuant to section 254J for consideration of that it is related to rates and budgeting. So I move that. Seconder, Councillor Martin. All in favour? Okay. live streaming on. Well, we've had quite the discussion about this pontoon Hope Island Channel leasing agreement, and we were informed by our very informative officer that there's been no less than 120 reports on this matter brought to council since its inception. So it certainly shows that it is a complex matter for us to consider. We have a recommendation which is moved by Councillor Fowler and seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. I will foreshadow the officer's recommendation. Councillor Fowler, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Chair. I won't say much because I know that we were in close, but I think for far too long we've had residents who have a pontoon on the Hope Island Channel who've been charged leasing fees, which is all public information, for far too long. It's not really a similar structure to anywhere that we do charge these sorts of fees for pontoons across the Gold Coast, and that's because we have a local government Act that states that we must charge these fees, so it's not in council's power to make these changes. So what I'm asking for today is for councillors to support us writing to the relevant minister to seek an exemption on whether we can charge market value on these leases, less than market rate on these leases moving forward. So I would appreciate councillors' support today so these residents do get equitable treatment like everybody else across the city.
Thank you. Anyone like to speak against? I will note that I will be voting against for the same reason that Councillor Fowler is voting for, which is I have concerns about the fairness and equity of a group of people who do have right to a lease on council land to be getting a benefit above and beyond other ratepayers. I appreciate it's something that you can see from either perspective, and I must acknowledge Councillor Fowler for her excellent work on behalf of her community and clearly standing up for her residents on this matter, but it's not something that I'll be supporting today. So is there anyone else who wishes to speak for this? Councillor Fowler, would you like to close?
Just to reiterate what I've already said, Chair, but I think we've got 352 impacted residents along a 3-kilometre body of water in Hope Island. The Hope Island Channel acts as a drainage that benefits thousands, not 352 people. And we've got 352 people who are paying the bulk of future maintenance and dredging of that channel. So I do believe, it's my opinion, that that's inequitable, and I'm very much asking councils for their support so that we can seek that ministerial exemption so that it becomes more equitable for these ratepayers. Thank you.
Excellent. So, and really, hats off, Councillor Fowler. I think there's been a number of councillors who've been trying that over decades, and that's a that's a win. Okay, where are we at? 7.3. Now, this was a request for a report, but did you want to have any? Are you happy with the report, or did you want to get any detail on this?
I have one question which I don't need to ask in close if you're okay.
Okay, great.
So, are you okay to do that now? Yeah. Thank you, through the chair. So, in relation to item 7.3, the report itself captures what occurred, and I think it's commendable the work that's gone into ensuring that some of the contingent labour have been offered permanent roles as city employees. That's actually a really good outcome. The report itself doesn't actually capture any of the financial elements of that, and some of what I'd hoped to understand is the financial advantage or not of that process, and I wondered if that might be able to be provided as maybe a supplementary briefing note or something, as opposed to having to delay the item.
Through you, Chair, yes, those numbers are available. I'm more than happy to provide those if we go into close. I can do that.
Oh, you have that today? I would like to. That was the intent of my question. So yeah, I can't do that, unfortunately.
That we're going in closed. Councillor Wilkinson, based on staff concerns, employee salary, commercial elements. All in favour? Very good. Thank you. To move that item. Councillor Martin, seconder, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to it? Or
No, Chair, I'm happy to.
would you like to speak to it, Councillor Tozer?
Thanks, Councillor Patterson. Look, the report that was considered by Council or the committee today relates to the conversion of a number of qualified individuals who were engaged on a contingent labour basis and have now formed part of our workforce. That transition has been successful, has resulted in a significant reduction in the city's reliance on contingent labour, but has also delivered a sense of certainty for those employees now that they're not working for a labour hire company, but actually working as city employees and working together to continue to improve the culture in our organisation. I think it was a really positive report that had some really good outcomes, but also the process has been a great and certain future for great employees who we wanted to hold on to.
Thank you. All in favour? Great. Excellent. Okay, we are on to 7.4. Artificial intelligence update. The one we've all been waiting for. So this is a closed item and we will be sure to share as much of this information as we are allowed to once this whatever the recommendation and whatever we decide on today. But today we are receiving an update from officers on an assessment of the potential use and current use of artificial intelligence in our city. So I move that we go into close. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Martin. Pursuant to section 254 for the reasons it's confidential because it could relate to procurement. Okay, all in favour? Very good. Thank you. We just received a very interesting update on artificial intelligence in the organisation. It's something that every organisation of our size needs to consider. I will move this recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Martin. Does anyone wish to speak to it? No. All in favour? Great. Thank you. Closed at 4:37. Thank you.